Hello crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I have a card for the latest lawnscaping challenge. The challenge this week is to create a one-layer card, so you can only use one piece of cardstock, and basically you need to make sure that your stamping is right there on your card base. I know this is a very tricky challenge for a lot of people because that fear of making a mistake and then having to start all over again because it's right there on your card base, but also, wanting to add embellishments or add the adorable pattern paper from Lawn Fawn. But I think that it's nice sometimes to kind of make yourself think outside the box and try something that might seem a little bit challenging or scary. So today I'm going to use the Lawn Fawn Blue Skies stamp set, which includes these hot air balloons and these flat-bottomed clouds. They have the Sunny Skies stamp set too, which has kites and the round clouds. But I really like the hot air balloons because they're fun to color, and I thought that I'd be able to easily create a scene with some masking because I could easily fussy cut out these. I believe I actually own the coordinating dies for this stamp set, but with masking I generally like the color to come right to the edge. I'm working on the Ken Oliver craft sheet here, and I will talk a little bit about what I discovered about working with it throughout the video. And I stamped a bunch of the images onto the Ink-A-Dink-A-Doo stamping mask paper. I personally prefer the mask paper to Post-it notes because I think that it lasts a little bit longer, but I know it can be a little bit more tricky to find. But as you'll see later on, I store my masks, and when I use the masking paper, I can reuse them many times, and so to me it's worth the little bit of extra cost. Plus, I have had my package of masking paper for years. I've given a few sheets to my sister, and I still have plenty of sheets left, so I think it's worth it. Now, here I was about to tape my card base onto my craft mat, and I didn't want the tape to be so sticky that it would tear up the cardstock, so I placed it on my skin, on my forearm there, to get a little bit of the stickiness off. And then I went to tape it down to the craft mat. And I thought, oh, it's maybe because I took so much of the sticky off, and that's why it doesn't stick to the craft mat. But it turns out that just generally, painter's tape does not stick to this craft mat. And for me, that was a pretty big bummer, a pretty big no-go. And so I went back to my Ranger craft sheet because I like to do things where I tape things down. I work with stencils a lot. I make my own backgrounds. I want to be able to hold my card in place as I go. And the fact that I can't do that on the Ken Oliver craft sheet is kind of discouraging. Now, it has that non-skid surface, so your card doesn't move around as much, but I don't want it just to be mostly secure. I want to know that it's really sticking down and not going to shift at all. So for me, I think maybe it's just because I'm comfortable with it, but I think that I'm going to, for the most part, continue to stick with the Ranger craft sheet. So I have cut out the masks, and they're completely fussy cut right to the edge, and I'm layering it on with the clouds. I want there to be some dimension, and so I am deciding to basically put on the clouds and the hot air balloons overlapping each other so it looks like there are layers, even though there's actually only going to be one layer on the whole overall card. So basically, the thing that you want to be in the foreground should be what is stamped first. So I decided that I wanted the clouds to be in front of the hot air balloon, so I stamped down the cloud, laid the mask over it, then I stamped down the hot air balloon. And going with the kind of general rule that odds look better, I have 3 clouds and 2 hot air balloons for that overall feeling of the overall rule of odds. And as I layer on this background sky, I am using a really light hand. I've heard some people comment that they feel like the blending out the distress inks can be really difficult and they aren't sure how to get that fade to white. I think one of the keys is to keep it really light. Take your time, because it is going to take a lot more time to put on the ink if you use a light hand, but to me it's worth it in the end. I started with some broken china because I wanted the middle to be darker, and then I blended out with the tumbled glass, which is one of the lightest blues available in the Distress palette. And I found that by layering those two colors together, I could get a deep blue in the center and then a slightly lighter blue on the outside. But they also blend really nicely together. And I've heard people say that part of the reason that they're not sure about their blending is that they are using something besides the Tim Holtz blending tool, maybe a makeup sponge, maybe those Sukaneko finger daubers. None of those work as well, in my personal opinion. If you want that soft blended out effect, I really do suggest investing in the Tim Holtz tool, as the makeup sponges are a slightly different kind of foam and they will hold the ink differently, but they're great for dabbing through stencils and for other techniques. But I definitely think the Tim Holtz blending foams are worth it. And so I told you I would talk about how I store my masks, and I just peel them off and place them right over the stamped image on the not the backing sheets, but the image sheets that come in front of the stamps. And for that little cloud, since I had used two of it, I just placed one on the front side and one on the back side. And so that'll all be right there when I'm ready to use this stamp set again. In the past, I cut out these masks with Post-it notes, and then I felt frustrated because when I came back to it, I couldn't use it any longer because they'd lost their stickiness. I'm going to be doing some Copic coloring. This isn't necessarily perfect for one layer cards because the Copic color is going to bleed through, but I'm going to show you how you can sort of cover that up a little bit in the end. I don't want to leave my clouds pure white just so they have a little bit of dimension, and so I'm just taking that C0 marker and adding just a touch of color to the bottom of the clouds. Then to color the hot air balloons, I've used this hot air balloon set a number of times because I think that it's really easy to color in. And so what I always do with the hot air balloon is I put the shadows at the top and the bottom and leave the middle of the hot air balloon the lightest because that gives the effect of the roundedness of the hot air balloon. And so I'm using V22 and V25. And so what I did was I laid down the lightest color, but I didn't let it touch the center yet because I want the center to stay considerably lighter. And then I laid down the darker color and blended it out with the lighter color, and only when I was on my final layer did I actually lay the lightest color in the middle, because I just want to make sure that I don't go over it too much, because the more you go over a Copic marker, the darker it gets. And that's how you could even get a little bit of blending with just one single marker, by layering the ink in one area and not another. And I do the same exact thing with the greens. In this case, I'm using YG13 and G14. I don't have the natural blending families, like I forget what G14 blends with, but I don't have the markers near it, so I just substitute in with the help of Sandy Allnock's hex chart. And once I have all of that colored, I'm ready to add my sentiment. As I go through the process, I'm trying to think about how I can add little bits of interest to the card while really sticking to that one layer. And so I decide to use some clear embossing with the sentiment. And one of the things that I really like about clear stamps is that you can see right through them. So I was able to move that clear stamp around on my card and determine where I'd want to place it. I sometimes even do that while it's on the backer sheet, just in case there's a little bit of old ink. To be perfectly honest, I am not the best at cleaning my stamps, and so sometimes there's a little bit of ink residue on them. Because I mostly stamp in black, I don't worry too much about the color transfer. But keep that in mind, because if you do put a dirty stamp on your project, it's going to be a lot more frustrating when you can't cover it up. You know, a lot of times I'm a big fan of, if you mess up on your sentiment, you can either try to fill it in, or you can just put a banner over it instead, but that's not an option today. So to take care of that ink bleeding through, the Copic ink, I'm just going to take a card mat and cover the inside of the card. And since I decided to round the corners on the outside, I'll round the corners of this mat. It's just a 1/4 inch shorter on each side so that it will cover the Copic coloring but not be the same exact size, so I don't have to worry about lining it up. and your recipient probably won't even notice that it's there, but it does just give you kind of a smoother, more finished look to the card. And once I lay that down, that's going to be it for this card today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in more crafting tutorials, including Copic coloring, distress ink backgrounds, a lot of Lawn Fawn, please consider subscribing to my channel if you aren't already. And I will leave you a link to the Lawnscaping blog so you can check out this challenge. There is a prize to be won from Lawn Fawn, who's the sponsor this week. Thanks for watching. Bye.